Welcome, starting your accessibility journey, a developer's guide. So before we get going, who is this burly white dude with a beard, with a green White Sox hat, and quite possibly the dopest t-shirt ever? HTML is across the front with a lightning bolt in between, made to represent AC/DC. Yeah, it's freaking awesome. I am Mark Steadman. I'm a principal accessibility engineer at Fidelity Investments. I have been in the accessibility field for about, I want to say 8 years now. I have been my time with State Farm, with the Q, and now Fidelity. I've had a lot of different experiences across many different types of platforms, web, mobile. I've been a jack of all trades from all different things I've done in my accessibility career. I'll put these up at the end, but I always like to have people follow me on Twitter. So I'm at Steady, STEADY 5063. And you can find me at Mark-Steady on LinkedIn. So why are we here? Before I get into this, I do want to let people know. I've had questions before this started that said, Mark, what is this talk? It's under organizational success, but you're a developer. You've done developer talks before. And you're right. It does have developer's guide in it, right? But this is actually more geared towards you all in general. This is geared towards everybody that touches a development team, not just, right, the users over and over that happen to be developers in day-to-day. This is geared to product owners that are around development teams. This is geared to Scrum Masters. This is geared to managers, right? How do we get started in an agile environment with accessibility, right? And get the developers on board. So if you're here, I'm going to be into some technical pieces with this, but I'm still going to keep it high level enough so that everybody can understand all the different strategies we're going to talk about today to start your accessibility journey as developers. And again, if there's questions, ask them. There is no bad question during the section, because at the end, I want to have a lot of questions to answer for you all as we go through, right? So before we get going into this, a lot of people also have asked me this question. Mark, how do you, when you talk about starting up from an accessibility side of things, right? How did you get into accessibility? That's a great question. So let's go into my accessibility journey. My accessibility journey started like this. Back in 2013, 14, I think, I was a web developer at State Farm. I went directly to statefarm.com. Funny story, I'm from Normal, Illinois, so you can make your jokes all you want right now. That's where State Farm is at, Bloomington Normal. And I was a web developer. Within my first 6 months, I was given a project, and that project was essentially to create an agent locator module. And that agent locator module, I have a screenshot here, but I'll describe it in general for everybody on it too, because the screenshot doesn't do it justice. Essentially what it is it's a Google Maps integration to show where agents are in location to where you search. So on the actual Google map, there are custom red pins that are little circles with A, B, C, D, E. And you could click them, get the information you needed, all that fun stuff. But as this was being designed, our design team and everybody around said, well, we want to make this so that it's accessible, right? So why don't we add a list view underneath? That list view will have the same data that's on the map. However, if somebody were to navigate with a keyboard or want to consume the data differently, we can have it there. And all of us all together said, whoo, all right, that's exactly what we need. It's going to be 100% accessible. Everyone's going to look at it and they're going to be like, man, this is super dope. I love it, right? But the truth of the matter is, that's not what's happening. In that list view that's underneath, essentially what we have is a pagination that's showing 5, 10, 15, 20, right? And underneath for each agent, we had an agent from left to right. We had an agent's image, their name, their location, and then on the far right, we had agent website, directions, and email, right? On paper, it sounds like a really good damn idea, right? Yeah, 2 different methods to talk about that from accessibility side of things, right? 2 different ways to consume the data. Let's go, it's going to be great, right? So I knocked this thing out, right? I finished this thing in record time. High fives all around. Let's go. Wow, Mark, you're the greatest. You're fantastic. It's going to get out the door. Agents are going to love it. Then reality set in really, really hard with this thing called accessibility. At the time, this company called DQ, who was doing Axcon, did an audit of this. And right when we were about to push out the door, they said, you can't push. You got way too many issues. I said accessibility issues, like whatever. What's that? Like security, right? Like a couple things here and there, fix it, right? But guess how many issues there were? Never forget, 256 individualized issues I had on that. And again, I'm sitting there with somebody who's now my teammate at Fidelity, who did the assessment, who said, wow, this is bad. And it was 256 individualized accessibility issues existed on my content I created. And this is the same thing that happens to a lot of developers, right? Where they create new content, they think it's super dope, they push it out the door and they say, well, I did an audit afterwards. What are all these accessibility issues, right? So that is when my accessibility journey began. I took the challenge to go ahead and move ahead with accessibility and change my perspective on what I was coding, right? My advantage that I had working at State Farm versus other places and other people that are involved with it is State Farm had a digital accessibility team, a centralized team, and we were also working with EQ at that time. So I actually got to meet with folks with disabilities who use screen readers, use keyboard only, right? And when I did that, I'm telling you right now, that was my moment of impact. Everybody in the accessibility field that gets into the accessibility field, I would say they have a moment of impact. This was my moment of impact, was I got to sit and watch somebody use a screen reader, use assistive technology and see how bad the stuff I made was, right? Yeah, it looks great, looks wonderful to everybody else. Hey, this is the greatest thing I've ever created. But I got to see firsthand just how bad the stuff was I created, right? And not everybody has that experience, but everybody in some way, shape, or form in their accessibility journey has a moment of impact where they go, wow, I get it, right? And the click happens. This was mine. So the one thing that I ran into, though, after I had that moment of impact, is I said, okay, I have 256 individual accessibility issues. How in the hell do I fix these, right? Every developer runs into this. I have no idea where to start. What am I doing? What do I even do, right? And I have on here one of my favorite memes. This is Jackie Chan with his hands both head next to his side. It says, where do I even start, right? Well, that's the challenge. And this is something that I'm really passionate about talking with development teams, product owners, everybody about, right? The challenge in this world that we live in, where everything has to get out the door now, is accessibility still has this stigma that is a time-consuming process that slows everything down. I mean, there's no way around that right now, because in the field, everybody thinks that it slows everything down, right? The main ones are, there's no way to automate. I'm going to lean to my camera and say, think about that. All the things you talked about at AxCon have talked about automation. There are still some developers and companies that think that automation does not exist, or flip it and say that you can automate everything, right? No, right? That's actually not the case. There is automation solutions. Again, we'll talk about that. The other challenge is impossible to learn, or learn at all, excuse me. And again, this kind of goes back to the same stigma that we talk about with automation. And developers want to learn stuff, but they want to learn it holistically, right? There's a reason why there's accessibility SME specialists out in the fields, right? Because they, for the most part, know a lot. I can tell you right now, there is no accessibility SME, myself, anybody else will say they know everything about accessibility. That's not the case, right? You can't learn it all, but you can learn things that you need to know to make yourself better. But again, that stigma is out there. And the big one, I'm sure everybody knows, manual testing is way too slow, right? Why can't I automate the world? Manual testing is way too damn slow. I can't get the things I want to get done because there's too many checks, right? So my experience with this, and the challenge with the piece I said above, developers naturally want to learn new things. They do. There is not a single developer, and I'm saying that, and if there are people on here probably shaking their heads, they know I can find one. I'm telling you right now, there's not a single developer that I have met that has not wanted to learn more. The key constraint is the agile environment. How quick things go out the door now, that is the problem. We have to keep up pace with it, but accessibility tends to want to slow things down from everyone's perspective, right? So for all of you here, how can we as accessibility advocates break through to devs, right? And development teams to get them on board and practicing accessibility? That is $1 million question. This is the reason why I wanted to do this talk, was to talk to everybody about this, because in my experience, I've come down to a couple different things. And the big thing, if you take anything away from this talk, is take the small wins. I have confetti and banners above at the very top of this and take the small wins in huge casts, because you have to take the small wins. I've been in the accessibility field for 8 years. So people have been in the accessibility field way longer than I. It can be deflating. It can. To constantly be told, no, this isn't a priority. We're not going to do that, right? It can be. And it makes you some point kind of be like, oh, like, am I ever going to get above that, right? But at the end of the day, if you take the small wins, those small wins lead to large gains. Some conversations that people have had in the accessibility field, talking about overlays. I'm going to use an overlay comparison, right? You can't just take development teams and say, go do accessibility overnight. It's impossible, right? We say the same thing about overlays with it. You can't just take a line of JavaScript and say, yeah, you're accessible. No, your team can't just do accessibility overnight. That's not going to happen. If you do that, it's failing right away. You have to take small incremental wins in order to be able to build up and get larger gains over time, right? And so the thing that I've come to learn with these small wins is there's really 3 main strategies that I've used in my time at State Farm, EQ, and now starting to use within Fidelity, is these 3 right here, right? Before I get going any longer, I have a Yoda meme on here that says, create a strategy you must. I'm not going to do a Yoda impression. I can't even begin to do that. But you have to create a strategy for developers, right? And so strategies to use for development teams are broken down into 3 main categories. First one is use automation daily. So accessibility testing libraries and linting, a 10-minute-a-day challenge, and test your content with keyboard. Now, before I jump into these, a lot of you are probably going to be thinking one thing in your head. Mark, you are extremely happy fast, and you are, how do I say this? You are actually thinking way too happily about accessibility, and people want to jump on board. You're damn right I am. But in my experience, everybody who's done these 3 things has had great success in building this up. So with that being said, let's jump into the specifics of these. Now, the first part here, just so that anybody who's on here for a website thing, iOS or Android, I am going to give tips for iOS and Android as well. I have slides at the end. This is heavily focused for web, but I do have stuff for native mobile as well, just so you all know. So using automation daily. If any of you know me, I'm a huge advocate for automation and accessibility. I am a realist. I will put this out there right now. You cannot automate everything, so that beginning, but automation has a lot of value added to it, right? Automated accessibility testing catches a lower third of accessibility issues while developers are developing content, right? First thing people say to me is, Mark, that's 33.3% of accessibility issues. Why would I even do that? You're right. We'll talk about the value of it here in just a minute, but the lower third of accessibility issues still can create a baseline accessible app and help your developers learn as they're developing, right? But that's just automation in general. Kind of is broken down to 2 different types. First type is accessibility testing libraries. There's 2 big ones in the market. The biggest one being AxScore from BQ, and the other one being P-Alley. Both of them JavaScript-based libraries. There's multiple integrations for them as well. AxScore has a load of different integrations. Still the most popular accessibility rules engine that's out in the field. But these work within your unit integration, end-to-end tests, and allow you to test for accessibility issues in your testing process, whatever that is, right? The other one is linting. AxLinter is absolutely fantastic to use. It's, again, from the fine folks at EQ. It has the accessibility rules engine behind, so AxScore rules behind it, catching accessibility issues. However, if you're already using something like an ESLint, or you're tied specifically to ESLint, you could use something like AxLinter. ESLint does have multiple different add-ons to tie in for like JSX, Angular, review files, right, that have accessibility checks in it as well, right? But linting allows you to check for accessibility issues as you are developing, different than accessibility testing libraries, which do it within your test cases. So let me break down the difference for you inside of here. So if I was to use an automated accessibility library, I have an example on my screen of somebody who, let's say they're using WebDriver.js to test their content. So this would be an integration level test, so full page of testing. If I was using Selenium WebDriver, right? In this example, I have a Selenium WebDriver that I brought in. What I would do is, before all the test cases are created, I would actually create the driver itself, create it. In this case here, I'm just using Chrome. You could use Firefox, Edge, whatever you want to do. And with that then, I also have an Ax driver. That Ax driver object then is what the AxScore integration for WebDriver.js is. What I do is I take the driver that I created, the Selenium WebDriver, I wrap it in the Axe builder, and now I create a test case that says, is this page accessible? Or in this case here, just this test is accessible, right? Whenever I go to that page, at any point, whenever I want to call Axe driver.analyze, I can scan that page for the accessibility issues, and then take that results object and do, I expect the results.violations, which are the one-to-one WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guideline issues, that length to be 0, right? This is just a basic example of it, right? Axe Core has integrations with Cypress, WebDriver IO, Puppeteer, WebDriver.js, React, right? There's a load of different integrations with this that fit different levels of tests, whether it's unit integration end-to-end, right? But automated accessibility libraries work within those test cases to allow you to have somewhat of a regression test in there to test for accessibility issues as you go. So now let's take this scenario here. I am a developer. I built my project out, right? And this project built within my CI/CD pipeline, right? I run these test cases. I get the accessibility results back, and I can see what the issues were at integration level, right? So this is just one way to do it. This is Axe Core. Axe WebDriver.js is one of the easiest ones to use. There also is Fidelity as well. Fidelity works relatively the same way, giving results back. It's absolutely fantastic library to use as well. I just use Axe because Axe is one of the most popular ones that's still out there. So that's automated accessibility libraries. Linting is different. For those of you who want to know, linting is more of as you code. So I have 2 screenshots up here, and I'll talk through both of them. The one on the left is using Axe Linter. Axe Linter, basically, and again, the ES Linter will be the same way. The linting, essentially, as I start to code, right? In this case here on the left, I have an image. It has a source and it has a class name, but it is missing an alt attribute, not alt tag. So the alt attribute that it's missing, okay, will be called out. So there's a red squiggly line underneath that image. And what it does is it'll put a little pop-up above it, and it'll say Axe Linter image alt. Ensures image element has alternate text or role of none or presentation, right? If a developer fixes that and adds an alt of null, that issue is fixed. I don't have to wait until my test cases run. I got those fixes right then and there. Boom, I'm done, and it's over, right? That's the beauty of linting, is I can get code corrections as I'm developing. It's actually super dope. It's one of the cooler things to use. The rule sets are a little bit lower even than automation, but again, it's really good to just get a baseline accessibility test. The other image I have here is using the JSX ESLint plugin that has accessibility rules. So in this case here, I have a label. The label element has absolutely nothing tied to it. So it doesn't have for, or the input doesn't have an ARIA label. So it's called out and says form label must have associated control. And so it's super cool because that, again, this is specific to JSX, but again, giving you feedback as you're developing. So if I put a 4 on there, or I think for React, it's HTML4 or whatever it is, it'll actually correct those and you can fix them as they go. Again, different than the accessibility automation library we're doing testing, you're getting it right then and there. And for you mobile folks, there is still mobile automation that's tied to it as well. So for Android, there's a Google Accessibility Scanner. It's still the most popular tool. It's just a little widget that shows up. You can press it, and it'll scan and give you accessibility results right then and there from Google's library. There's the accessibility test framework. Put this on there. I don't know if ATF is supported as well as it used to be or it's used as much anymore, but it's still out there. It's one of the most popular. Google has it in documentation. The other one then is iOS. So iOS comes with an accessibility inspector in Xcode as you're developing that you can run individual checks on, or you can just run an audit. It has about 5 to 6 checks, I think, maybe even less than that. But you can check it at that time and get your accessibility results for it. There also is a Swift UI accessibility snapshot test that's out there too. Starting to use it, it's pretty cool, but it's more of a visual test than anything else. So there are automation solutions for mobile as well. So what are the outcomes from using automation, right? The biggest one here is learning accessibility in small chunks by issues, right? Most of these things have help links or suggested fixes that once the developer starts using this, right, there's no added time. I'm getting those results right then and there. Boom, 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 right? I'm getting the results back. I can get what I need from accessibility side things, and boom, I'm getting the actual data I need to learn. It also helps enforce accessibility best practices, right? So in code reviews, I can say, hey, I expect there to be no Axe violations or PLA violations on this. Or I can say, well, why are we using so much ARIA? Why don't we just use semantic HTML, right? You can enforce practices with that. You can also enforce a accessibility policy in CI/CD. Zero policy, for anyone who knows, means there's zero violations. So in this case here, I can say there are 0 accessibility violations when this gets built into integration. So again, automation is easy because you can learn as you go, you can enforce best practices, and you can check it in CI/CD and get results back to you. Okay? So that is automation. And again, automation to me, to some other people, is the easiest way to get somebody on board successfully, right? Hey, I'm getting results right then and there, whether it's linting or the accessibility libraries. And I can take tangible outcomes from that and learn, right? The other one I have is the 10 minutes a day challenge. So a little background for this. Once upon a time, I met with the development team. And I asked them, how much time do you all have to do like any custom learner research, right? And I figured I would get a decent amount of responses of, well, Mark, we have a lot of teams or sprints that we can do, like twice a year to learn stuff. What I got was probably closer to 80% of teams being like, we don't have 15 minutes. And that's literally what a dev said to me. And I finally just said, they said, we don't have 15 minutes. So I finally said, okay, cool. You have 10 minutes then, right? And they laughed and they said, sure, what could we do in 10 minutes? And that's where this idea kind of sprung from. And I came back to them and said, okay, you challenged me for it, so I'll put you to it. I do have a meme on here that's got the ain't nobody got time for that person. Along with Boromir, it says one to simply not have time for that. Because I just can't help but do Lord of the Rings memes in my thing too. But the 10 minutes a day challenge, as simple as the title, take 10 minutes a day for accessibility knowledge gathering. I know some of you on here are going to be like, no way this works. 10 minutes is like nothing. You're correct, it is nothing, but it is something. We talk about small wins. This is a small win. I have seen this work with development teams over and over and over again. And what we do is we aim it a little bit more towards the developer themselves, right? Let's make it a little bit more custom to them. So this can be as simple as the following. I can take an accessibility training course, right? Again, I know everybody's thinking, Mark, 10 minutes for accessibility training. Yeah, 10 minutes for accessibility training. Do the things that you need to do to be successful at your job. Do the training courses that you need to pick up the things that you need for that day or for that week, and grab those things and run with them so you understand from accessibility perspective what you need to know to be able to develop or to be able to do your job, to be able to give it to the developers, right? So I put a couple of examples on here. It's W3 Accessibility Foundations, there's Udacity course that are both free. I'd be remiss if I didn't put the Q University because it's super dope. It's a paid subscription, but it is awesome. It's got some of the best content for the best people in the field out there. The other one is reading accessibility articles. I have to say, the best thing to do, everyone always says, where do I go? Join a newsletter, the Alley Project, Alley Weekly, WebAIM's newsletter. They will give you 10 things to read a week, a month, right? Depending on when they are. Pick one, read it, involve yourself, get yourself knowledge base into it, get your developers knowledge into that to be able to say, hey, here is an article that relates to me, right? Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to do something that blankets everything, right? The biggest fallacy in training is that you blanket everything. And what I mean by that is, using this as personal experience I've seen in the field and for myself, where they say, hey, take these courses and do them all to completion and tell us when you're done, right? And I can tell you 50 to 60% of that I didn't even need. I just need to get to the stuff that I needed from there and be able to pull that. So this builds an accessibility foundation, 10 minutes a day does, of things that are specific to developers' needs, not just everything. Let developers find what they need, because again, it goes back to my one point. Developers want to learn, but if you put everything in front of them, they're gonna back away from it, saying, I don't think I want to do that, right? It's too much. Let them do it in their small chunks. The small chunks of learning turn into bigger chunks over time. I have a graphic up here, and I am a true believer in this, and I've seen it work. 10 minutes will turn to 20. 20 will turn to 40. 40 will turn to an hour. Before you know it, you have an accessible developer. Promise you that. That's one of the things that I harp on all the time is 10 minutes a day leads to better outcomes than a blanket solution of training where you say, hey, go do it. Again, kind of back to the overlay policy of give a single line JavaScript, it's fixed. No, let them learn the things at their pace as they go. Have small check-ins, whether it's a stand-up, things like that, to know what they're learning. But let them learn at their pace, right? And so that's, oops, sorry, I skipped ahead just too quick. But that's one of the things with this that's huge. Small chunks. And again, some of you are probably saying, Mark, no way. I'm telling you, I've seen this work wonders within dev teams to watch teams grow and learn as we go, right? So that's 10 minutes a day. The final piece that I suggest for anybody who's starting their Alley journeys, get people on board, is testing with a keyboard. And trust me, native mobile folks, if you're on here, I have something for you too. It's not just going to be keyboard, okay? Manual accessibility, no joke, can seem like a lot. It can. Personal experience, anybody who has done manual testing, done that stuff, there's a lot of checks. There's a lot of things you're looking at. I can tell you right now, it's a load. You can look at it and say, wow, there's a lot of things that I didn't know, right? I get that. I do. So what strategies I've used before is to break manual testing down to smaller chunks, right? What do I need if I do X, Y, Z? One of the things I've seen be most successful, more than other ones of breaking down things into chunks with it, is just testing with a keyboard, right? Some of these things aren't even my idea. I've seen other companies pick this up, other talks, other companies have done this, but make it simple by introducing keyboard testing. For example, use no mouse Mondays. I have no mouse at all. Everything I do, I have to do with the keyboard, right? If I do, I'm going to learn really quickly that most of my stuff isn't accessible with a keyboard. But make these simple, right? So my keyboard test initially can just be, if it's actionable, I can focus it. Does it have a focus indicator? So let's use an example, right? It's going to sound like I'm describing Amazon, but let's say I have a product. Product has an image. To the right of that, it has a header, has a description underneath that. And to the far right, it has an add to cart or leave for later, right? Sounds a little bit like Amazon, I know. But if I develop that, what I could have my developers do from a manual perspective is tab to those buttons. Can I focus it? Does it have a focus indicator on it? And does it work with enter or space and space or space? We say and space. I'm a happy path for that. And just those small checks can make your content so much more accessible, especially in the world of React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, Ember, all of them, right? So many custom components are out there with roll of button, roll of link, tab index of 0, and click, right? Learn really quickly that that's not going to have keyboard focus. More than likely, you're going to have keyboard focus. Or if you do have tab index of 0, it's not going to work with enter and space because click is tied just to the mouse, right? So that's it. Initially, that's it. Have them do just small chunks of tests. Because again, this will evolve over time, right? It will. Something as simple as keyboard testing will evolve over time. And it's a big advocate for it because, again, a lot of people still do accessibility testing, even with a screen reader, with their mouse. Adding in keyboard only changes that mentality and it starts to kind of gear you towards using a screen reader, right? So an outcome from this, and I'm a huge advocate for it, it's why I'm wearing the HTML shirt, but it builds a foundation for manual testing. But the biggest piece is it enforces keyboard functionality for everything in the application, and it enforces the use of semantic HTML over time. If you all don't believe me, let me tell you right now, so many teams that I've worked with at my time within DQ, within State Farm, right? What I've seen is teams will start to look at this and say, we have a custom button. That button is made with divs, tab index of 0, that has all these pieces on it, blah, 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 blah. Why didn't we just use semantic HTML on a button so we don't have to have 2 different events that are then checking for enter and space, and we're doing all this extra work and we could just use a button? It works. Trust me, it does. To get people, if you tell a developer right now, and any developers on this call, that I have to remove code and I have less work to deal with, they're going to be like, awesome, guaranteed. Unless, you have some people that really do like to code and they like overcomplicated stuff. I don't know why you would. But it does enforce those pieces, right? And again, the other piece, it helps development teams add more manual checks over time. So for example, the natural progression from this is screen reader testing. It makes screen reader testing less daunting. So now I know, hey, can it work with enter and space? And then from there, do I have an accessible name that matches with a screen reader, right? Do I, can I navigate besides without tab? Can I navigate with arrow keys, right? It's a little bit of a natural progression into those other tests with a screen reader as well. And then on top of that, I have no rhyme or reason, but for some reason, the people I've tried this out on, the next logical thing to do is Zoom testing. So they actually want to Zoom test on their page. I think it's just because it's an easy manual check, but Zoom will come into play as well. No rhyme or reason to that, but again, like I said, it leads to easier checks down the line. Okay. And so those are the three big ones, right? Automation, using the 10 minutes a day challenge, and keyword testing. And using those three in tandem or one or the other has led to great outcomes from it. So what does this all mean though, right? And why all of you are here. And again, I've said the piece I wanted to say, if you left here with anything, take the small wins, right? But it also does this. You're also building for the future. Just doing any of these three things automatically get people on board with accessibility? Absolutely not. No. But it gives you a foundation for ideas to try and get them on board with it, right? Everything takes time to learn and master. Everything takes time to adjust and kind of curve the way you want to do it. The one thing that I would say to everybody on here, I've given ideas on here. You don't have to take those ideas verbatim. Adjust them to what you're going to do, right? For your team, for your organization, for what it's going to be, right? And the biggest thing with this is it's about building a foundation in an ever-changing world of priorities and influences. The one thing that I've seen a lot of, and a lot of you that know this, is priorities change all the time with organizations. So organization one day might say, accessibility is our jam, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then drops. Silence, you're not going to hear anything from them. And so what these strategies do, I kind of use a wave analogy. Sometimes you see a huge wave with a huge undercurrent that'll pull it out. Think of that as when everybody's on board with accessibility. Let's go, we're all going the same direction, pulling out. But when a wave gets smaller, right? Yeah, it may not have as much force, but no matter what, there's an undercurrent that keeps pulling that back out. And that's where accessibility stays, right? It's always going to be there. 10 minutes a day challenge, automation, everything, right? Priorities may change, but accessibility stays constant, right? No matter what, even if people aren't thinking about it, it stays constant. And that's the biggest thing that these strategies do, is keep it in the minds of developers, product owners, scrum masters, right? Where yes, if priorities change, it's not completely forgotten. I'm still building my content, I'm still building a foundation for the future. And last but not least, using these strategies can help developers down a path that I have traveled. It's made me into what I am now. I'm not saying that every developer has to be me, not even close. I have a major passion for this topic, as you can tell. I'm all red-faced and fired up as I'm going through. But you have to know that this builds accessibility champions, it builds people that care. And the biggest thing it does is it builds developers that give a damn about the stuff they make. You know, in the world that we live in now, the one thing we need is more people that care about the content they create, and everybody and everything that it affects. And the one thing that I've seen with these strategies is it's built that. It builds that foundation, that undercurrent we talk about, to make that giant wave of accessibility, get those people on board with it. And, you know, my experience of having, you know, what I thought was an accessible experience, and then having that eye-opening moment of, oh my God, this is not even close to accessible, right? That made me start to give a damn about accessibility. That made me start to give a damn about the stuff I do every day, right? And so that's what we get with most of these developers pick this up, is they start to care. And that's truly, truly, truly what we need to build for the future for accessible content, both on web and on mobile. So with that, that is my spiel. And I left plenty of time for questions, Travis. So we're good. We're good. So any questions from anybody?
Mark, unfortunately, we didn't get a single question. Sorry.
Man.
Just joking with you, buddy. So yeah, let's get right into it. Thank you for leaving time, because this is a popular topic and we have a lot of questions. I'm going to just kind of do it democratically and go by upvotes for now. But yeah, if you're ready, let's get into the first one. This is from Anonymous. The question is, what can I do as a developer to convince my product and project managers that making our sites accessible should be a high priority?
Sure. That's one of the tough ones. And to be honest with you, it's something that we as accessibility advocates deal with every day. Getting them on board with it is actually relatively straightforward. The biggest argument for it is it makes our content usable for everybody. And I'm going to say this because everybody has this idea that there is a, how do I say this? There is a average user. Put them in a box. There's an average user of our site. No, there isn't. There isn't an average user. There is a user. And accessibility is part of being that user of our content, right? So if 25% of people can't use my content, yeah, it ain't worth it. So there isn't just a single in the box average user. There's a user, and that's people without disabilities, right? That's people who might not be able to use content, right? So that's one argument I've always used. I've actually had success with that. And the other one is try using your site. I always do this because there's an older generation of people who are using the web. My folks will be the first. My parents are in their 60s. They'll be the first people to tell you this, actually. If you Zoom a site right away, I guarantee you most people Zoom their content. I Zoom my content. I'm 32 years old. And I Zoom my content on my phone, on my browser, right? If you Zoom it, the moment you show an impact of something that affects them, they'll start to get on board a little bit more. And Zoom seems to be one of the bigger ones in there. Once you start to see content starts to clash and things like that. And the last one I always use, if you need an ace in the hole, is you always say it has to do with SEO. So search engine optimization is the last piece with it as well. But those are the three ones I have. The first one being the most successful one of showing them how inaccessible it is and saying that there is no just average user. There's a user, right? People with disabilities are a part of that. So you have to make your content accessible.
Awesome. Good answer. Good question. I'm going to skip around a little bit because this kind of plays off of your answer just then. There's a couple of questions around Zoom. One of them says, what Zoom level does your team code for? That's from Anonymous.
Say that.
And there's another related question that says, what Zoom level does your team code for?
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry. You broke up just a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good, dude. So 200% right now is the one we go for. So 200% standard for WCAG 2.0. Sorry. And if I'm wrong, some accessibility person is probably messaging me right now telling me I'm wrong. It's fine. And then 2.1 is 400% technically. Thank you. But we do 200%.
Okay. And, there was another that was related to that says when checking Zoom, it is best to use the browser settings rather than zoom in and out shortcuts. Is that correct?
So I think by shortcuts I mean Control++. I'm guessing that's still a browser function.
Yeah.
With that, if you're talking native mobile has the enlarged text sizes on there, which would be like the farthest would be 200%. Not like extra large sizes, just like that would be the largest one on there. But those are native functions that we're talking about for shortcuts on there. So yeah, that would be using them.
Okay. So I responded to this one already while you were speaking, and it is the most upvoted. And this is near and dear to your heart, Mark.
Oh boy.
You're going to love, no, it's an easy one for you.
Oh, okay.
This is from Anonymous. Should I learn semantic HTML or ARIA first?
Holy hell. You learn semantic HTML first. Like,
I knew you were going to love that one.
I keep saying this to everybody that's like on here, and I keep saying, like, if you take one thing away, whatever. If you take something away from the question segment of this, it's that. Use semantic HTML. I can tell you right now, semantic HTML will save you loads of time. It will. We kind of talked about it from like click events, all that fun stuff. But also it will save you from getting into the weeds of having the worst experience with ARIA. So many things I see in the field are people will put ARIA on everything and they end up in a pretty messed up web of ARIA. And it's hard to get back out of that. They would just use semantic HTML in the first place, right? In tandem with everything else they've got, we'd be in great shape. Use semantic HTML, learn it because it has so many built-in accessibility options already there. Use it and learn it.
So not a dismissal of ARIA, but just a prioritization there is what that answer was, right?
Yeah. There are 100% practical uses for ARIA. There are. Not downplaying that. There's things that ARIA adds to the accessibility tree, but learning semantic HTML first to know if you even need ARIA is the biggest.
Awesome. I knew you'd like that question. Thank you for whoever submitted that one. Let's get into another one. Here's a good one. This is also anonymous. I'm a UX designer. Any tips or learned lessons to apply into my design process to support and collaborate with my developers with accessibility support as our goal?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right?
So first and foremost, if you haven't, go watch Anna Cook's talk for accessible design. They have really good stuff. I'm not like a design guru, but the one thing that I'll tell you from a developer, I've been a developer who's consumed designs. The one thing that I'll tell you is always put what your meaning of the things are in your design doc. So for example, design docs I've seen basically highlight things on there and say, here is basically underline, and they assume that you think it's a link, right? But really, I just code it and put it out there, right? No, I should have this. This should be a anchor tag or with a roll of link. This should have this text behind the scenes, right? Anything you can do to help nudge developers to know what they have to add from accessibility perspective helps that out, right? What should this be announcing as? What is my intent as a design, right? What are those things for me? Because again, I've consumed designs when I was a developer that it was like a tab, but I wasn't given any guidance on that there was anything that had to do with tabs, right? So I just made some tabs and said, look how cool is this? This is super dope, right? And right away I got feedback back that was like, hey, there's all these issues, right? So putting your intent of what those objects are going to be, what their purpose is, right? And any type of accessible help on there help as well. Again, I'm speaking more from developers consuming. There's a lot more out there. I'm going to talk here at Axon if you get a chance to watch them to talk more about tagging and things like that in design space.
Great answer. Yeah, tricky space too. What is this thing? So I forget who did the talk about the turducken, but is it a tab? Is it a link? Is it a control? All right. So that was a good question. Here's one, and this is probably about more frameworks than or all frameworks, but it asks if I call it does it work with Shadow DOM is the question.
Ooh, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. I know that AxeCore does. I don't know if PLA does or not. AxeCore does a pretty good job of doing that, but I don't know if PLA does or not. To be very truthful, I haven't used PLA in a while, so I'm not as up to date on it. It may, but I don't want to misspeak on that, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so yeah, maybe do a little research on that one, and or DM Mark. There's going to be a slide with all your contact information, correct?
Oh yeah, I can go back to that. Hold on.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it won't. It's just us on the screen, but in the slides.
Yep.
What's your Twitter again? Might as well shout it out.
At Steady STEADY 5063. So if you have questions that we don't answer on here too, you can shoot them to me as well on Twitter.
That's 5063.
5063. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know the PLA answer either. I do know the AxeCore answer, but I'm trying to stay neutral here. There's some native questions here. This is a good one. Can native app engineers use the linters you mentioned, or are they only for web development?
Good question. So there actually are a couple. Now, I'm not going to misspeak. I know that there are things in progress from at least iOS and Android that are linting options. I don't know how viable they are. To be honest with you, this is really this is really cool. This is actually brought up. I'm actually in the process of vetting those. So if you do find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, I can let you know what I think of them. There are a couple out there that are supposedly supposed to help you as you develop. Again, I can't speak for validity of them or anything like that, or if they're truly like linters or if they're more like, unit testing, things like that. But I do know that there are some people that have attempted to do them, but I haven't done the research enough to jump into those specifically. For the most part, for native side, it's using the functionality both of like for Android using the accessibility scanner. I think Android has an auditor now too. And for iOS using the inspector auditor. And again, I know there's iOS devs in here that probably like that thing breaks all the time. I totally understand in Xcode thing breaks all the dang time. But if you follow me, I'll give a little bit more on that. I don't want to misspeak on the linting of that. I know there's some folks that have put things out there for it. But I'm not sure if it's legitimate, like linting, or if it's more of like unit testing as part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's a question that skyrocketed up the charts, and it came in just a moment ago. And this is like my origin story, your origin story. You're going to like this one. This is also anonymous. It says, it sounds like you made a transition from developer to accessibility specialist. How did you manage that transition, and what is the balance of your work now?
That's a good question. So yeah, I did. But at the heart of it, I'm still a developer. So kind of giving a little bit more in-depth story on me. So when I was at State Farm, I was developing statefarm.com for about 2 years, and then I moved to State Farm's accessibility team. When I did that, I actually took a lot of time, and I had the time dedicated to learn to all of the ins and outs. I say all the ins and outs. There's never an all the ins and outs, but enough of the ins and outs from accessibility side of things to become an accessibility specialist. The one thing I can suggest to you, if you want to become an accessibility specialist, surround yourself with people who know what they're talking about, whether that's on Twitter, whether it's on LinkedIn. Follow people who write, right? Find people who are big names, like within Axcon has some huge names in accessibility. Find them, read their articles, right? That's what I did. That's how I became an accessibility specialist. Kind of like into the 10 minutes a day where you learn, right? You find the things that you want to get into and you get into them. So like JavaScript frameworks, CI/CD stuff, and then native side of things has been my jam from an accessibility perspective. That's how I got into it. And then when I came to DQ, I actually was doing development work. I worked on developer services at DQ. So we helped teams with remediation, kind of did some consulting here and there, but we still developed. So I code stuff on the side. I code different examples, things like that. I'm not directly coding into like projects or things you see. My passion more came from getting content and teaching developers how to make accessible content, right? And that's where my passion has grown to do this now. And even my current job where I'm teaching developers how to make accessible content. And that's been my passion. That's kind of my journey to get there. So I would suggest this, kind of roundabout, sorry, I'm going roundabout with it. Find some people in the accessibility community. I got it, Travis, I can see it. Just kidding. So I would suggest finding people in the accessibility community. Again, start with Axcon. Look at the list of people that are here. You can find them on Twitter, LinkedIn, find them. Most of us write, most of us talk at other places too. Find the things you want to get into if you want to get into the accessibility side of things, and learn, right? Kind of like the 10 minutes a day. Take that, but use those instead, right? That's the biggest thing I can say if you're looking to get into that accessibility specialist piece. But again, I still code, right? It's just not like full-fledged, into the wild, things like that. I make examples and things, but not a developer on a development team per se.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. We got time for a couple more. Maybe squeeze 3 in. Here's one that you might like. This is from Kathy in Austin. Best way for UX UI designers to annotate for developers.
Oh, so I'm gonna do a huge. I'll pass on this because I'm not a designer per se.
But as a developer, how would you like to consume it? How about thinking of the question that way?
Okay, that's a good point. So I would like to see, if you're tagging it, I would like to see what is the purpose of it, right? What's the action I'm trying to achieve? And then also what's its role, right? Is this a tab? Is this a button? Is this a link, right? Is this a navigation? All different pieces of that to know what I need to create. Because in the world we live in now, so many people consume designs and just make it all divs because they don't know, right? They don't get that from it. So any types of pieces that can tell me what those objects I'm creating's purposes and roles, that helps.
Awesome. Let me speed through a couple. This is an easy one. Are these dev tools, do these dev tools have both Mac and PC versions? Our team have a mix of both. I think that's a yes for everything we've talked about today, right?
Yep.
Quick yes. All right. Sorry to do the speed round because we're almost out of time.
No, you're fine.
This is a really popular one when it came in. I loved it. What do you think the value of accessibility certifications are?
Ooh, I think they're valuable. It doesn't mean, so here's my take on it, right? I'll tell you right now, I don't have a web certification. I don't have a CPAC. But does that hopefully make people think less of me? I don't think so. It's good to have them. It's also good to kind of have a feather in your cap. If you're looking to get an accessibility field, always puts you a little bit higher up if you have like a WAS or a CPAC. I'm NVDA certified, so I can technically certified for non-visual desktop assistant. But it doesn't necessarily hurt or help. It will help you if you're looking for an accessibility specific job. But if you're a web developer, you probably could get the WAS relatively easily because of some of the stuff you work on day to day and making content accessible.
Awesome. I'm going to try to be good and just close us out on time. We went a little bit over. There's a ton of great questions. And for those who can't see the screen, go to the session page to get Mark's contact information. Thank you so much, Mark, for your presentation. And thank you all for the participation. There's so much awesome. Somebody actually, let me say one more thing. Sean actually said, can we make a 10 minutes a day website? And he already threw a GitHub link in here. So maybe this is an idea. Do you know Sean Thompson?
No, but I was getting notifications on my phone and it said like GitHub created something. I was like, what in the world?
Yeah. So
yeah,
we'll
awesome.
follow up with you offline, Sean. Thank you all so much for attending Axe Core. There's one more track starting at 5. Check out those sessions, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, team. Thanks,
Later.
ASL.